Everybody, I'm Kelly Wright, Senior White House Correspondent for CBN News, and we're joining you today because of what's happening within the Trump administration. President-elect Trump receiving threats among his cabinet members that he's chosen to nominate. And look, we're close to Thanksgiving, and in fact, Thanksgiving is taking place tomorrow. And the families of these nominees have been threatened along with the nominees themselves. Let me read a statement to you that came out earlier today. Last night and this morning, several of President Trump's cabinet nominees and administration appointees were targeted in violent, un-American threats to their lives and those who live with them. These attacks range from bomb threats to swatting. In response, law enforcement and other authorities acted quickly to ensure the safety of those who were targeted. President Trump and the entire transition team are grateful for their swift action. President Trump and the transition team are focused on doing the work of uniting our nation by ensuring a safe and prosperous future. And with President Trump as our example, dangerous acts of intimidation and violence will not deter us. That's from Caroline Leavitt, the incoming White House press secretary for President-elect Trump. Joining me right now, I have with me two guests who have followed politics very closely. One is Bunni. She is the author of Jesus and Politics. She is also based in Texas, where she ran for political office. And then I also have Bobby Kipper, a 30-year law enforcement veteran who has founded, speaking of violence, he founded the National Center for the Prevention of Community Violence, to which he operates from a science of actively caring for people. How about that? A science for kindness. And yet here we are, Bunny and Bobby, pre-Thanksgiving Day, and these new nominees who are only being nominated to serve this country, serve America, and help the nation, are now having to deal with these threats from various people. The FBI is investigating the case. Law enforcement has acted very critically and swiftly. But I got to get your take on this in terms of how you see this, and then I'll get to Bobby about the law enforcement aspect.
Well, first of all, Kelly, I think as the body of Christ, we can't stop praying when the election is over. You know, it is critical that we continue to pray for our national leaders, and it's really concerning. Lee Zeldin is one of the ones that was targeted. He's a former client of mine that will, if he gets through nominations, will be the EPA agency head. But his house was threatened with a bomb, a pipe bomb, and he put on Twitter that it had a pro-Palestinian message on it, and he's Jewish. So I think we have a lot of people that are misinformed, that don't understand the value of all humanity, and that are really letting evil forces control them in this moment. And we need to be praying diligently and making sure that we support law enforcement and everything that they need in these moments.
And since you brought up Lee Zeldin, the fact that he's Jewish, and that threat came from, or allegedly came from, a pro-Palestinian group, or at least a group claiming to be that way, we've seen an uptick, as you know, a rise in anti-Semitism across the country and around the world. And you know Lee Zeldin personally. What do you think he's saying to his family right now as he's preparing, like all American families, to celebrate Thanksgiving?
I think we're thinking about history and thinking that we've lived pretty comfortably in the United States, and you just wake up and you think, I'm going to serve, I'm going to be a public servant. But now you have to deal with what? Bomb threats when you're about to take in a cabinet position. It's a horrific day to live in, and we need to, I think they're got to be sober right now. Lee has a Hispanic wife and two beautiful daughters, and he's got a life that he has laid down for the service of our country. As a former veteran, as a former member of Congress, a former gubernatorial candidate. So the man has been diligent to follow and be obedient to what he felt like God was calling him to do. So it is definitely sobering. And I think all of us as Americans, especially Christians, need to be holding up their arms in prayer and sending our support and encouragement to these public servants.
Yeah, without a doubt, we do have to pray for our leaders and pray for these men and women who are willing to serve valiantly and courageously and boldly for this country and this new incoming president. Bobby, I want to get to you. Here's something that the FBI has said in a statement about these threats. The FBI said that it is aware of numerous bomb threats and swatting incidents targeting incoming administration nominees and appointees, and we are working with our law enforcement partners. We take all potential threats seriously and, as always, encourage members of the public immediately report anything they consider suspicious to law enforcement. Bobby, you've served admirably and courageously yourself, and thank you for your service as a public servant in terms of law enforcement. Well, what's happening here? First of all, people are commending law enforcement for their swift actions.
That's right, Kelly. And I think it's interesting to note that whether we agree politically with people or not, everybody in this country has the right to due process under the law. And that includes having your family and you individually protected against the type of things that we're seeing here. I do commend the fast response of law enforcement, and I absolutely commend the involvement of the FBI. When we're talking about bomb threats with, basically with the Palestinian, measure of it, then it falls into the area of a hate crime. And so I would hope that they would step up that investigation, and I'm sure they're viewing that aspect of it as we speak. Again, this is unfortunately the reality we live with in the United States. It's not a reality that we're comfortable with, and I agree with Bunny that we need to pray that does not become the common reality. But regardless of what people decide to do, when they step across that threshold and violate the law and threaten families with ultimate violence of bombs, then there has to be something reckoned with. And it sounds like the FBI and local authorities have jumped right on it.
And Bobby, from that perspective, as a law enforcement member or retired, you're still advising administrations. You advised the Trump administration in the past on bullying as well as the Bush administration. What about political hate speech and the incendiary aspects of that? What it can actually incite? Are we seeing some remnants of this going back to what the Biden administration has stated, or what President Biden himself stated about President-elect Trump being Hitler and things of that nature? Is all this coming to bear?
Kelly, I have a saying that violence is a process and not an event. And I certainly think this fits right in the category of that. I mean, you can't propose violent language. You can't propose violent, talk and battering back and forth with anybody, even if you oppose them politically, and expect the average person out here on the street not to grab some of that and run with it. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. I think inciting, language, inciting comments between parties never goes to good. And I think we're seeing that here. I think there's been some insightful things that have been said, and that lights a fire and a candle under some people. And you're going to have more of this, and if it doesn't calm down. My hope and prayer is that now that we're through the election, that some of this would stop. Obviously, at this point today, as we speak, it has not. And I think the only thing we can do is address what's here and now and address every crime as it's a new crime. But I do agree with you. I think the adversity between the parties into the election has led into a lot of, and let's also understand there were at least 2 attempts of assassination to the now elected president. So this is not something that's been new, that's been dragged out here. It's a continuation. But my concern is now it's involving more people. And that is a concern because that really takes a lot of law enforcement resources and eventually a lot of protection. And it would be great when these people can be sworn in as cabinet members, because that will increase their protection factor as far as the U.S. government is concerned.
You had talked to me earlier, Bunny, to get to you, but you spoke to me earlier, Bobby, about the fact that what's happening right now really can exhaust law enforcement resources. I mean, thank God they're there and we're swift in actually getting to protect the nominee that President-elect Trump has chosen to kill his cabinet. But it does put a drain on law enforcement locally, does it not?
Absolutely. And I have good friends that actually even work at the FBI level. And one of the things that they are busy doing constantly is trying to chase down these specific threats and the threatening language that comes in. And so I really think the federal authorities are really looking at this closely, which I admire the fact that they're not taking a line on whose side it's on. They're basically taking it as it comes in, but they are exhausted. They're down, as you're well aware. You and I have talked about this before, but policing is down in America, and some of these departments are really lacking for resources. But this is a priority because we've got to try to stop it on the front end so it doesn't increase or continue. And so it does. It puts a definite strain on law enforcement resources, especially now in America at a time when law enforcement is sort of hurting in retention issues.
Not only that, at a time that we should be healing, Bunny, as you know, President-elect Donald Trump was invited to the White House by the outgoing president of the United States, Joe Biden, just a couple of weeks ago. I was there at the White House when they had a briefing about that. Karine Jean-Pierre, the current White House press secretary, stated that the two men entered into substantive dialogue that went on for nearly 2 hours. And the one question that wasn't asked, and I raised my hand during the briefing to try to get her attention to ask the question, is during that time period, did these two leaders have time to discuss healing America after such a divisive campaign where political hate speech had run amok? And as Bobby just talked about, an assassination attempt, at least 2 assassination attempts on President-elect Donald Trump as he was campaigning. We need healing in America. And that's the question that has to be asked. How do we heal the soul of America, which this president coming in wants to do, and the outgoing president wanted to do it as well, but we didn't get there. What's troubling to you politically right now, Bud?
What's troubling to me, Kelly, is the amount of people that are really worried about sitting down with family members on Thanksgiving that voted differently than them. I think all of us have people in our families and our communities and our friendships that didn't vote the same way that we did, might not have the same worldview, struggle with different issues, right? And we need to keep those conversations open. We cannot just kill them with our words. We have to give them the same respect that we want them to give us. The golden rule has to be maintained right now in America. But at the end of the day, having worked for members of Congress for years, I would work for very conservative Republican members of Congress. And former Congressman Jeb Hensarling used to say, as he sat down with Maxine Waters in the Financial Services Committee, she is, sincerely wrong. But she is, sincere in her beliefs. So we have to realize that Americans, they're very sincere. If they're staying within the law and not doing what we're talking about right now, we have the right to disagree. And I believe, hopefully, that's what Trump and President Biden spoke about in that room.
Yeah, I hope so, because we have to learn as Americans to agree to disagree, but still live in harmony. That is the bottom line. Again, for those of you who are just perhaps watching us right now, no doubt you've heard about the fact that President-elect Donald Trump's nominees were threatened with bomb threats and swatting. The FBI is following up on these cases. Local law enforcement in the various areas where these nominees are located and living have swooped in to actually protect them and help them and serve them. We commend the law enforcement that has been there and so actively and proactive. Bobby, before we close, you have a campaign through your National Center for the Prevention of Community Violence called Actively Caring for People. I can't think of a better time right now, Bobby and Bunny, that we should be actively caring for our neighbor so that we can actually take care of each other, regardless of our political stripes and regardless of the fact if we've been chosen by the president-elect to be nominated to serve this country as a member of his cabinet. Uh, Talk to us real quickly about actively caring for people and why that matters for such a time as this.
Well, Kelly, as you well know, I mean, this all borders on character. Everything we're talking about borders on character. These are decisions of the heart to be insightful or to be, and we believe we can change that. If we get into a person's heart, you know, being nice is an outward appearance. Being kind is an internal choice. And so we believe that actively caring for people, when we look at the research and the science of kindness that we've developed and we've, you know, become evangelists, and you've been some real supporter of us with this. But I would say that, you know, there's a science to turning the page in this country, and it's called actively caring for people. It's really, you know, getting people to the point where they might be down and out, but they can be better. And they can be better with all of us surrounding them and showing acts of kindness. Show it to your neighbor. I mean, this is a time where people should be thankful for what they have. But we also should be, you know, addressing those people who are down and out in our communities. And that means reaching out to people that have not. And so we are on a campaign to turn the page in America. And we hope that we can do that in 2025 through the science of kindness and called actively caring for people. And I would invite people to join our mission at actively caring in the number 4p.org, actively caring ac4p.org. We're ready to go to town and change these dynamics once and for all.
And Bunny, I got to read in before we close. You've been very active in politics. You've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. This is this is an ugly moment where these families that are at one point were elated that their loved ones had been nominated by President-elect Donald Trump to serve in their cabinet. Now they have to be concerned about the way forward. Yet, nevertheless, we're talking about families now that have to gather around Thanksgiving with a question mark of saying, "Are we okay?" Prayer is very important in America. And this is the Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN. You've written a book called Jesus in Politics. What would Jesus do?
Jesus would be interceding as he is right now, ever before the Father in prayer for these leaders. And again, Kelly, we can't stop with an election. We sometimes in American culture like to pray when we're in a crisis. We like to pray when there's an emergency. We like to pray around an election, but we sometimes forget that we need to be talking to God constantly. What we do with Christians Engaged, our ministry is to help people pray, vote, and engage ongoing. And lastly, I'll say, you know, one thing we teach ongoing is to take on a position, not a person. Positions are something that we need to be bold about, be courageous about. We need to be fighting for what we believe, biblical values, etc. But remember that people are loved by God. People are created in the image of God. And so we take on a position, not a person. And that really helps us to be able to operate with biblical truth, but also operate within the Sermon on the Mount.
Certainly that means a lot today and every day for America and the way forward. I'm going to read again real quickly as I begin to close. This is a statement from the White House press secretary, incoming White House press secretary for President-elect Donald Trump, Caroline Leavitt, who wrote this: last night and this morning, several of President Trump's cabinet nominees and administration appointees were targeted in violent, un-American threats to their lives and those who live with them. These attacks range from bomb threats to swatting. In response, law enforcement and other authorities acted quickly to ensure the safety of those who were targeted. President Trump and the entire transition team are grateful for their swift action. And here's something else that she added that I think is very telling as we lead to a prayer in closing this. President Trump and the transition team are focused on doing the work of uniting our nation by ensuring a safe and prosperous future. With President Trump as our example, dangerous acts of intimidation and violence will not deter us. Right there, Ms. Levitt, going back to what happened in Butler, of course, that assassination unsuccessful, and you recall that the campaigner at former President Trump raised his fist to say that we must fight, fight, fight. That is something that is indelible on the memories of everyone who watched that. But the key thing that she said there is that the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, will pursue unity. And that is what we need at a point like now. So for those families that have been threatened, those nominees that have been threatened, just encourage you to pray for them. Keep them in prayer. Keep this nation in prayer as we move forward as a leader in this world, that we understand that we have to work together, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And by the way, Erica, from Bobby Kipper, Bunni Pounds, and myself, Kelly Wright, Senior White House Correspondent for CBN News, we wish you all and pray that you all gather around your families and thank God and have a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for watching this report.